If you're a language teacher and you're looking for ideas that are a little bit more creative, a little bit more energetic that you can try out with your students around using text or pictures, then this is the video for you. I'm going to work with Google Gemini, but this would work perfectly with ChatGPT or other large language models. This is based on a closing presentation that I gave at the IATEFL conference in Poland in 2025. I've had some lovely feedback from it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on just the practical ideas. So if you watch this video, you're going to get some really useful ideas that you can try out in class with your students, either in class or online. Really hope you like the video, and as always, if you do, please like it, please share it, please comment on it. Don't forget, when you like, to click on the hype button now, because you can also hype my videos. And of course, join me on my YouTube channel. I'd love to have more of you subscribe. So let's get started. Really practical, full of ideas, working with text and images. And I'm going to use Google Gemini, but you could use another large language model. Now, the whole of this talk is kind of based around one principle. If we look at a picture, what we tend to do with pictures is we tend to describe them in language learning. So we talk about what we can see, but really that's not what pictures are there for. Pictures convey meaning, and in fact, more than ever in our society, we're using visuals, video, pictures to manipulate and affect what we think, our ideas, marketing, politics, etc. So what we need to do in language teaching, and this makes language learning as also more interesting, is to shift away from always describing pictures, which is a good idea, but it's much more important these days to look at pictures and try to interpret and understand them and understand what they're trying to say. So if we looked at this picture, we could talk about the picture in terms of what we could see, but we could also talk about the story behind this picture. Now, the story behind this picture could be about the fact that people spend all their time now on telephones, and they're always spending their time on telephones, and therefore they very rarely communicate. So there's a whole story there around kind of society. There's also a story around where people get their information from, so they don't look up now, or they don't read in newspapers, rather they get all their information from the internet. And that could, of course, be very dangerous in terms of how it might manipulate and affect them and affect what they think and the types of information that they're getting, where they're accessing that information from. So that's another whole area. But another angle could be how useful telephones are in terms of getting information, in terms of learning things. And we all know that the internet, as well as being really negative, is also really positive, and we can use it for a lot of good things. We could also talk about, for example, this picture from the point of view of always being connected and always being connected to other people through our internet. There's lots of different interpretations. This picture carries lots of meaning. Now, in that one idea, there are great opportunities to do very interesting language learning activities. And I'm going to try and show you 3 ideas. This first idea, I'm going to use Google Gemini, but as I've said, you could do this in ChatGPT. And I don't know if you realized, I'm just going to go to my apps and open up Google Gemini, but in ChatGPT and Google Gemini, and probably in other tools, you can click on Add File, and you can actually upload a file. And you can upload a file of a picture, for example, upload a picture and then ask Gemini to describe that picture. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Gemini to do one description of the picture that I just showed you as a description of the picture, and then one description I want it to be actually an interpretation of the picture. So Gemini is going to produce 2 completely different texts for me. One that describes the picture and one that interprets the picture. Now, this is really powerful if we show this to students, because can they look at the 2 descriptions and understand the differences? Let me show you what Google Gemini produced. Now, Google Gemini produced this text. Now, I have to say, the first time I did it, I didn't ask Google Gemini to control the level. I was just testing the idea. So I've got a text on the left that is purely a description and a text on the right that is purely an interpretation. Now, first of all, it's really interesting for students to read these two texts and understand the different functions of the language. One is to describe and the other is to interpret. Now, there's a few interesting exercises that we could do working with this text. For example, we could just ask some questions and students could identify, do they get the answer from the first text or from the second text? And then, of course, they can actually answer the question. So that's one thing that we could do with the text. But another thing that would be interesting is to tell students, okay, you've got the two texts. Take some of the information from A and some of the information from B and write your own description. So this is really powerful because it's first of all helping them to understand that texts, when we look at pictures, we not only describe them in terms of what we can see, but we also interpret them. And in fact, interpreting pictures is perhaps more important than ever before. And this activity will really help them, it will raise their awareness of the fact that text can either be, well, in reality, they're often a combination of the two, but that we've got a description and we've got an interpretation. And this would also mean that hopefully if the students combine parts from A and parts from B together, that each student would produce a different text. Now, you could do this at different levels. So you could say to ChatGPT or to Gemini, describe this image for me. Can you produce it at level intermediate, for example, B1 level in English? And it will write the description at that level. Or you could say, can you interpret this picture at level B1 in French or Spanish or whatever language you want to work for? So this idea of getting Gemini to help you to generate content, to perhaps do a slightly different type of descriptive activity around text, looking at both the possibility of the description of an image but also the interpretation of it, is really, really powerful. Just to make the point here, you can see that the first text in this one is a description, the second one's an interpretation, and this is at a much lower level than the original, so I asked it to write the text at level B1 in English, so in other words, an intermediate level. Okay, this next activity really combines lots of different things about this idea of helping students to understand that pictures can be described, but more importantly, can be interpreted. What I would do is I would show the students this picture and maybe give them 1 minute to very quickly talk to their partner about the picture, or maybe to even think of all the vocabulary associated with the picture, some kind of warmer activity. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the students a series of questions about the picture. Now, some of the questions are questions that focus on the description of the picture, and some of the questions are questions that focus on the meaning and the implication. Remember, I'm trying to help my students to understand that it's not only about describing a picture, but it's also about interpreting a picture. So the students read all the questions, so that's interesting because they're doing a kind of reading activity, and now they're going to choose one question from the first group and one question from the second group. So they choose one descriptive question and one interpretation question. And then what you do is you move back to the picture and tell the students now to work in pairs. They read out their questions to their partner and then discuss the answers. So in total, they're going to answer 4 questions, okay? Because each student will have one descriptive question and one meaning question. If they work in pairs, there'll be 4 questions for them to discuss. This is a powerful activity and can be done at lots of different levels. Now, interestingly, I got in this activity, I asked Google Gemini to produce the questions, and it produced about 10 questions around the description and 10 questions around the meaning and implication. And then I deleted some of them because I didn't want to put all the questions on the screen. You could put more questions, but often if you ask Google Gemini, generate 10 descriptive questions about this picture, it will produce those questions for you, and then ask it, can you produce 10 questions based around a meaning in an interpretation of the picture, and it will do it for you, and then you can use them. Now, this is really powerful because this saves you masses of time. For you to do this yourself would be really time consuming. Just to clarify, ELi are not sponsoring this video in any way at all. I'm just simply using the slides from the presentation that I gave at IATEFL Poland, and that event was actually sponsored by ELi. And just in recognition of the fact that I've used many pictures from their books, I will, in the description below, put links to their website if you do want to look at some of their products. Let's carry on now with the presentation. Now, this final idea I've never tried out with a group of students or even with my teachers on Patreon, but I've been using this idea quite a lot in my own language level. So I'm learning Polish at the moment, and what I call this is text A, text B, analyze. And what I mean is I get ChatGPT or Google Gemini to write a text for me in Polish on the topic that I'm interested in, or that I'm currently studying, or that I'm studying the vocabulary around that topic. And then I get ChatGPT to write me a slightly higher level text on the same topic. But I also ask it to tell me the differences between text A and text B. And then what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking at the first text, and then I'm trying to build on that first text and to learn some of the vocabulary and language that will take me to a higher level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a picture into Google Gemini. I'm going to get it to write 2 descriptions of the same picture but at slightly different levels. But I'm really going to be careful about how I increase the level of the exercise. So to talk to Google Gemini, you need to click on this button. Google Gemini, I've just uploaded a picture. Can you write a description of that picture? But I'd like that description to be at level A2. We can call that like a pre-intermediate level of English. So the level is fairly low. And then can you rewrite the same description, but I only want you to change and increase the level of 5 vocabulary items. So use the same text but change 5 of the words to make the level slightly higher, because I want my students to read the first text, read the second text, and then identify the 5 words that have changed for slightly more complex or more vocabulary, lexically more difficult words. Can you also highlight what those 5 words are? Click on stop, then click on send. Let's see what Google Gemini produces. Actually, it's interesting what Google Gemini has done. It showed me the words and then the change of words. Finish, complete, big, imposing, very clever. Hats, mortarboards, which is very good. Elated, happy. I really like this type of idea. Now, I want to confess, I've never done this in a lesson. I really like this, but I have done this for myself in Polish, and I think this idea has a lot of potential. So if you were interested in studying a bit more with me, then obviously the first thing you could do is sign up to the newsletter. And don't forget, if you sign up to the newsletter, you'll get that free mini 14-part course which highlights some of the key technologies that teachers and students are using to learn and study languages. The second thing you can do, particularly if you're a teacher, is to join me on Patreon. Now, if you join me on Patreon, you will get 3 videos a month, and these videos are exclusive to Patreon. I often cover technologies that I don't even cover on YouTube. These are really for teachers, and there are lots of practical ideas about using technology in your teaching and learning. But not only that, you'll actually meet me once a month live online. And it's a chance for us to actually practice using some of these technologies. Now, if you can't make the live sessions, of course, I record them for all my Patreons. Now, at the moment, there's a special offer as well. If you join Patreon, which is only $6 a month, and you can leave at any time, you will also get access to all of the videos that I've already put up on Patreon, which is 2 years worth of content. The last thing that you can think of doing is joining me on my very popular course, which is called Technologies and Approaches to Blended, Hybrid and Teaching Online. It's very popular. I do that in conjunction with NILE. That's a 6-week course that includes 6 meetings with me online, as well as lots of material that you have to work through, and you have to build an e-portfolio. It's one of the most successful courses I've ever run, and again, that is exclusively for language teachers. You can click on the link below and get more information about that. Thank you very much. I'm going to leave some videos on the screen now and some useful playlists that you might find helpful.